The black emptiness of space stretched endlessly around the Proxima 7 system, where floating rocks and metal-rich asteroids drifted like forgotten jewels. Among these silent giants, the Vorthak Dominion fleet moved with deadly purpose. Their ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, long curved hulls that gleamed like polished bone, with weapon ports that looked like hungry mouths ready to devour anything that challenged them. Admiral Kesimura stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Destroyer. He was an impressive sight even by alien standards, nearly 8 feet, tall with skin that looked like living crystal, changing colors as light hit it from different angles. His forearms moved gracefully as he studied the holographic display floating before him, and when he saw what approached his fleet, those crystalline features twisted into what might have been a smile. 12 tiny dots appeared on his sensors, 12 human ships approaching his position like moths flying toward a flame. The Admiral's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of amusement among his people. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, perhaps both. Captain Hyun-Soo Park sat in the command chair of the UES Seoul, one of those 12 approaching. Vessels. His ship was clean and functional, built for efficiency rather than intimidation. The bridge crew worked quietly around him, their faces showing the calm professionalism that marked Earth's finest military personnel. Park himself was a veteran of 3 border conflicts, a man who had learned to keep his emotions locked away. During battle, "Sir, we're receiving multiple targeting locks from the alien fleet," reported his tactical officer, a young woman whose steady voice betrayed none of the fear she surely felt. Park nodded slowly. "Maintain course and speed. No aggressive actions." Meanwhile, aboard the UES Busan, Fleet Commander Minji Kim watched the unfolding situation with the eyes of a predator. She had spent 15 years climbing through the ranks of Earth's space. Navy and every instinct she had developed told her this moment would define humanity's future among the stars. Her crew didn't speak. They didn't need to. Everyone knew their jobs and everyone understood what was at stake. The Vorthak had arrived in this system 3 years ago, claiming it belonged to them by right of conquest. The asteroids here contained trilithium, a rare mineral essential for faster-than-light travel. Without access to trilithium, humanity would remain trapped in their small corner of the galaxy while other species expanded their empires across the stars. Admiral Kesimura's mandibles, the insect-like mouthparts that helped him speak, clicked together in a rhythm that sounded almost like laughter. In his 300 years of life, he had conquered 17 different star systems. He had seen species bow before the might of the Vorthak Dominion, watched entire civilizations surrender rather than face his fleet in battle. These humans would be no different. His ships outnumbered the approaching human fleet by more than 4 to 1. Each Vorthak warship carried enough firepower to crack a moon in half, and their shields could deflect anything short of a supernova blast. The human vessels, by comparison, looked like toys, small, simple things that seemed almost primitive, next to the elegant curves and deadly beauty of Dominion technology. But Commander Kim knew something that Admiral Kesimura did not. As she watched the alien fleet positioning itself for what they clearly believed would be an easy victory, she allowed herself a small smile. Her hand rested near a single red button on her command console, a button that would change everything. In the next few minutes, the Vorthak Admiral activated his communication systems, preparing to offer these foolish humans one last chance to retreat before he demonstrated why his species ruled this part of the galaxy. He had no idea that he was about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating humanity. The communication channels suddenly filled with Admiral Kesimura's booming voice, carried across the void by powerful transmitters that made his words echo through every human ship. The alien's translator device worked perfectly, but it couldn't hide the sneering arrogance in his tone. Every word dripped with contempt, as if he were speaking to insects that had somehow learned to build spaceships. "Attention, pathetic human vessels," the Admiral's voice thundered through the speakers on every bridge. "You dare to enter sacred Vorthak territory with your laughable toys. We have ruled the stars since before your ancestors crawled out of E. Whatever mud pit spawned your miserable species." Captain Diane Lee sat perfectly still in her command chair, aboard the UES Incheon, her fingers steepled as she listened to the alien's rant. She was a diplomat by training, someone who had spent years learning to negotiate with hostile alien species. Her voice remained calm and professional when she activated her communication system. "Admiral Kesamura, we come in peace," she replied, her words measured and careful. "Earth's government seeks a reasonable discussion about mining rights in this system. Our geological surveys show that the trilithium deposits here are vast enough to support both our peoples without conflict." The response came like a thunderclap. "Your surveys are worthless garbage." The alien admiral's roar was so loud that several human crew members winced and reached for their headset volume controls. "We conquered 17 entire star systems while your species was still banging rocks together and grunting in caves. Your primitive scans mean nothing to the mighty Vorthak Dominion." Aboard the UES Daegu, Commander Jae-won Choi felt his jaw tighten as the insults continued pouring through the communication channels. His tactical officer, a seasoned veteran who had seen action in 3 different conflicts, raised an eyebrow and shook his head slowly. Both men had dealt with hostile aliens before, but the Vorthak seemed particularly fond of their own voices. "Sir," the tactical officer whispered, "their arrogance is almost impressive. They're not even trying to hide their battle formations while they talk." Lieutenant So Young-nam, hunched over her communications console on the bridge of the UES Gwangju, couldn't help but smirk as she monitored the ongoing transmissions. "These guys really love the sound of their own voices," she muttered to her fellow officers. "I've heard street vendors who were less pushy than this admiral." The Vorthak fleet commander wasn't finished with his speech. His voice boomed across space again, each word carefully chosen to humiliate and intimidate. "Look around you, insignificant. Mammals. Count our ships. See the power of weapons that could turn your pathetic homeworld into cosmic dust. We offer you one chance. Turn your rickety collection of scrap metal around and flee back to whatever backward planet spawned you." Throughout this entire exchange, the 12 human ships continued their steady approach. Their engines hummed with quiet efficiency, producing just enough thrust to maintain their course toward the asteroid field where the Vorthak fleet waited. To anyone watching the sensor displays, the human vessels appeared almost defenseless. Their weapon systems showed minimal energy signatures, their shields were barely active, and their formation looked more like a peaceful merchant convoy than a military force. The Vorthak sensors registered exactly what they expected to see: 12 small underarmed ships that posed no threat to their massive fleet. Their crews relaxed at their battle stations, confident that this encounter would end with either human surrender or a very short, very one-sided battle. But appearances can be deceiving in the vast emptiness of space. While Admiral Kesamura continued his verbal assault, believing he was intimidating a helpless human fleet, the reality was far different from what his sensors told him. The human ships that looked so small and harmless were about to reveal secrets that would shake the foundations of Vorthak military doctrine. Captain Da-Yoon Lee listened to the ongoing threats with the patience of someone who knew something her opponent did not. Her hand moved slowly toward a secure communication panel, ready to send a coded signal that would change everything. The Vorthak fleet moved like a pack of predators surrounding wounded prey. Their massive warships shifted positions, with practiced precision, each vessel taking its assigned place in a formation they had used to crush dozens of other species. The largest ships, mountain-sized dreadnoughts bristling with weapon systems, positioned themselves above and below the small human fleet, like the jaws of a cosmic trap ready to snap shut. Admiral Kesamura's flagship, the dreaded Bone Render, glided forward until it loomed directly in front of the human formation. The ship was a terrifying sight, nearly 2 miles long, its hull carved with the names of conquered worlds and decorated with trophies taken from defeated enemies. Weapon ports along its sides began to glow with deadly energy as the ship's massive reactors powered up for battle. From his command throne on the bridge, Admiral Kesamura surveyed the tactical display with satisfaction. 49 Vorthak warships now surrounded 12 tiny human vessels. The outcome was so obvious that he almost felt sorry for these foolish mammals who had wandered into his territory like lost children. Pathetic humans, his voice boomed across. All communication frequencies, each word carefully chosen to crush any remaining hope in human hearts. Observe your situation. You are completely surrounded by the finest warships in the galaxy. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your small numbers mean nothing against our overwhelming force. He paused dramatically, enjoying the moment of absolute power over these inferior beings. I am Admiral Kesmora, conqueror of 17 worlds, destroyer of the Helian Empire, terror of the Outer Rim. I offer you one final mercy. Surrender. Immediately, and I promise you will die quickly rather than slowly. Captain Seung-ho Kim sat calmly in his command chair aboard the UES Gwangju, listening to the aliens' threats with the composure of a man who had faced death many times before. His crew looked to him for guidance, their faces showing trust in their commander despite the overwhelming odds they faced. When he finally responded, his voice carried no trace of fear or desperation. "Admiral Kesmora," he said politely, "we thank you for your generous offer. However, we must respectfully decline your invitation to surrender." The response seemed to enrage the Vorthak commander even further. Across the alien fleet, weapon systems came online with a sound like distant thunder. Plasma cannons emerged from hidden compartments, their barrels glowing with contained energy, hot enough to melt through solid steel. Torpedo tubes opened like hungry mouths, revealing the deadly antimatter warheads that could vaporize entire city blocks. Energy readings spiked across every sensor display as the Vorthak fleet prepared to demonstrate their military superiority. The space around the human ships began to hum with barely contained power as dozens of weapon systems locked onto their targets. "Foolish mammals," Admiral Kesmora snarled. "Your arrogance will cost you dearly. All ships, prepare boarding parties. I want prisoners from each human vessel. These creatures will serve as perfect examples to show other species what happens when they dare to challenge Vorthak authority." Throughout the alien fleet, soldiers began suiting up in heavy armor, checking their weapons and preparing to storm. The human ships. They expected this to be easy work. Humans were known to be physically weak compared to most galactic species, and their technology appeared primitive. But aboard the UES Ulsan, Commander Eun-ji Park watched the alien preparations with calm eyes. Her bridge crew maintained perfect discipline, each officer ready at their station, despite the overwhelming enemy force surrounding them. Her right hand rested near a small red button on her command console, a button marked with words that would soon change everything. Protocol 7. The silence on her bridge was complete, except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Every crew member understood that the next few moments would determine not just their own fate, but possibly the future of humanity among the stars. "Commander." Park took a deep breath and whispered the words that would transform this apparent defeat into something completely unexpected. "It's time." Captain Seung-ho Kim's finger moved toward the small red switch on his command console, with the deliberate calm of a man who had been waiting for this exact moment. Around him, his bridge crew held their breath as their commander prepared to reveal humanity's greatest military secret. "All ships," he spoke into his communicator, his voice carrying across the fleet through encrypted channels, "execute Protocol 7. It's time to show these aliens what humans are really capable of when we stop pretending to be weak." What happened next would be remembered as one of the most shocking moments in galactic military history. The 12 human vessels, which had appeared so small and helpless just seconds before, suddenly began changing in ways that defied everything the Vorthak thought they knew about human technology. The transformation started with a sound like metal, singing, a harmonic vibration that rippled through space as hull plating began to move. What the aliens had assumed was simple armor plating suddenly retracted with mechanical precision that would have impressed the finest engineers in the galaxy. Sections of each ship's outer hull folded back like the petals of some enormous mechanical flower, revealing hidden chambers that had been completely invisible to Vorthak sensors. Admiral Kesmora stood frozen on his command bridge, watching his tactical display with eyes that grew wider with each passing second. The neat 12 dots representing human ships were suddenly multiplying, splitting into dozens, then hundreds of smaller contacts. His mandibles clicked frantically as he tried to process what his instruments were telling him. "This cannot be possible," he whispered, his crystalline skin shifting to colors that indicated deep shock among his species. "Our sensors detected only 12 small vessels. Where are all these new contacts coming from?" The UES Sol provided the most dramatic example of the transformation taking place. Its outer hull didn't just retract, it split apart in multiple directions like a blooming flower made of metal and advanced composites. What emerged from within was not a small underarmed escort vessel, but a massive carrier ship that had been disguised as something much smaller and less threatening. From hidden bays that had been completely invisible just moments before, sleek fighter craft began emerging in perfect formation, their engines ignited with brilliant blue flames that lit up the surrounding space like tiny stars being born. Each fighter was a masterpiece of human engineering, fast, agile, and armed with weapons that the Vorthak had never encountered before. Lieutenant Dong Hyun-yoon was among the first pilots to launch, his interceptor shooting out of the carrier, bay with acceleration that would have crushed most alien species. Behind him came wave after wave of additional craft, some piloted by humans, others controlled by advanced artificial intelligence systems that could react faster than any biological brain. Squadron leaders, this is Dragon 1, Yoon's voice crackled over the communication channels as he led his formation toward the nearest Vorthak cruiser. Remember your training. These aliens think we're primitive, so let's educate them about human ingenuity. But the fighters were just the beginning. From every human ship, unmanned drones began pouring out in numbers that seemed impossible. These weren't simple automated weapons. They were sophisticated combat units that could think, adapt, and coordinate their attacks in ways that confused and terrified the watching Vorthak commanders. Commander Min-ji Kim watched the transformation. From her position on the bridge of the UES Busan, which had revealed itself to be not just a carrier, but a command and control vessel bristling with advanced sensor arrays and communication systems. Her smile was grim but satisfied as she opened fleet-wide communications. "All vessels weapons-free," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had planned this moment for years. "Show them exactly why Earth's military doctrine has always been peace through superior firepower." The Vorthak fleet, which had expected to crush 12 helpless human ships, suddenly found themselves facing over 400 individual combat units, each one more advanced than anything in their own arsenal. The peaceful emptiness of space around Proxima 7 suddenly exploded into the most chaotic battle the galaxy had seen in centuries. What moments before had been a quiet standoff between 12 small human ships and a massive alien fleet now became a swirling hurricane of combat craft, energy weapons, and desperate alien voices screaming orders across communication channels. Pilot. Yujin Lee gripped the controls of her fighter as she dove through a narrow gap between two Vorthak destroyers, her training taking over as muscle memory guided her through maneuvers that would have been impossible for most species to survive. Her fighter's plasma cannons fired in perfect rhythm, each shot calculated by her onboard computer to hit exactly where the enemy's shields were weakest. "Direct hit on Cruiser 7, she reported over her headset, watching with satisfaction, as her weapons tore through the alien vessel's defensive barriers like paper. Their shield frequency is rotating every 3 seconds, uploading the pattern to all units now. Around her, the space filled with dozens of other human pilots, each one executing attack runs with the precision of a master craftsman. But these weren't random individual attacks. Every movement was coordinated through quantum communication links that connected each pilot's neural interface to a central tactical computer. When one pilot learned something about enemy defenses, every other pilot knew it instantly. The result was terrifying to watch if you were on the receiving end. Human fighters moved like schools of fish, turning and diving in perfect unison, anticipating each other's moves before they happened. When Vorthak weapons fire forced one group to break formation, another group was already moving to cover the gap. Captain Woo Jin Park commanded this aerial ballet from the bridge of the UES Daejeon, which had transformed from what appeared to be a simple transport into a specialized assault carrier packed with experimental weapons. His ship's hull bristled with energy projectors and missile launchers that used technology the Vorthak had never seen before. "All fighter squadrons, focus your attacks on their command ship," he ordered, his tactical display showing the flow of battle in real time. "Take out their communications array first, then work on their weapon systems. I want that admiral to know what it feels like to be helpless. The Vorthak fleet found themselves in a nightmare scenario their military planners had never prepared for. Their massive warships had been designed to fight other large vessels in traditional space battles, ship against ship, matching firepower against firepower in contests that could last for hours. But human tactics threw all of that out the window. Instead of facing other big ships, the Vorthak found themselves swarmed by hundreds of small, fast-moving targets that attacked from every direction at once. Their heavy weapons, designed to punch through the thick armor of enemy dreadnoughts, were too slow and clumsy to target the nimble human fighters. It was like trying to swat flies with a sledgehammer. Admiral Kesamura stood on his bridge, watching his tactical display fill with more red enemy icons than he had ever seen in one battle. Ships that his sensors had registered as 12 small, contacts now showed as over 400 individual threats, each one moving with purpose and deadly efficiency. "This is impossible," he roared at his tactical officer. "Where did they all come from? How did our sensors miss so many ships?" "Sir," his officer replied, his voice shaking with panic. "They were hidden inside the larger vessels. Each human ship was actually a carrier in disguise. All ships concentrate fire on the carrier vessels," the admiral commanded desperately. "Ignore the small craft. Destroy their motherships." But even as he gave the order, Admiral Kesamura knew it was too late. Commander Hiwon Cho's drone squadrons had already penetrated deep into his fleet's formation, their artificial intelligence systems learning and adapting to Vorthak tactics faster than organic minds could respond. Each drone that survived an enemy attack immediately shared what it had learned with every other drone in the swarm. The humans had done something that military theorists had claimed was impossible. They had turned apparent weakness into overwhelming strength, transforming a small fleet into an unstoppable force that seemed to multiply before the aliens' terrified eyes. The Vorthak had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries, confident in their technological dominance over every species they encountered. Their energy shields could stop any known weapon, their sensors could detect any approaching threat, and their military doctrine had never failed them in countless battles. But as the fight raged around Proxima 7, Admiral Kesamura watched, in horror as everything he believed about warfare crumbled before his eyes. Captain Kyung-Soo Nam piloted his corvette directly toward a Vorthak battlecruiser, ignoring the massive energy shields that flickered around the enemy vessel like a protective bubble. His crew braced for impact, expecting their ship to bounce harmlessly off the alien defenses. Instead, something impossible happened. The human corvette passed through the shields as if they were made of smoke, emerging on the other side completely unharmed. "Direct strike on target," Nam reported calmly, as his weapons fired point-blank into the battlecruiser's unprotected hull. "Their shields can't touch us when we're operating on dimensional Phase 7. Admiral Kesamura's crystalline features shifted to deep purple, a color that indicated complete confusion among his species. "Science Officer Veltar," he barked, "explain to me how these primitives are penetrating our shields." The science officer, a brilliant member of the Vorthak's most educated caste, stared at his instruments with trembling hands. "Admiral, their weapons appear to be shifting between different dimensional frequencies. Our shields were designed to stop conventional energy attacks, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles. But these human weapons exist partially outside normal space-time." "That's impossible," the Admiral roared. "No species has mastered dimensional warfare technology." But even as he spoke, more human ships were demonstrating abilities that defied everything the Vorthak thought they knew about physics. Lieutenant, Colonel Soo-Jin Park commanded her vessel from a state-of-the-art control center, watching calmly as Vorthak plasma cannons fired at her ship's hull. The first few shots struck with tremendous force, their superheated energy designed to melt through any known armor. What happened next amazed even her own crew. The ship's outer hull, made from a revolutionary material that Earth scientists called adaptive nanocomposite, began changing its molecular structure in real time. The metal literally learned from each attack, reconfiguring itself to better resist the specific type of energy hitting it. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported with barely contained excitement, "Hull sections 7 through 12 have adapted to their plasma frequency. The next volley should be completely ineffective. Park smiled grimly. Earth's Materials Science Division will be pleased to hear their theories work in combat, continue evasive maneuvers and return fire, but perhaps the most terrifying aspect of human military technology wasn't any single weapon or defensive system. It was how perfectly coordinated their entire fleet operated. Commander Jae-hyun Lee sat in the command center of the UES Pohang, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the position and status of every human vessel in the battle. His ship's artificial intelligence system maintained constant communication with every other AI in the fleet, creating a network of shared information that operated faster than any biological brain could process. Corvette Squadron 3, adjust. Heading by 15 degrees, Lee ordered, watching as his tactical display showed the future positions of every ship in the battle. Destroyer Group 2 will need that attack corridor in exactly 47 seconds. The coordination was so perfect that it seemed supernatural to outside observers. Human ships turned and accelerated in formation, each one knowing exactly where. Its companions would be several seconds in the future. When one vessel came under heavy fire, others were already moving to support it before the attack even began. Captain Zorketh of the Vorthak cruiser Knight's Edge transmitted desperately to his admiral, "Sir, we cannot predict their movements. Their entire fleet operates like a single creature with hundreds of bodies. Every time we target one ship, 3 others appear to defend it. Every time we think we've found a weakness, they adapt their tactics instantly. The alien fleet, despite starting the battle with overwhelming numerical superiority, found themselves being systematically taken apart by human technology and tactics that seemed to come from science fiction rather than reality. Their centuries of military dominance meant nothing against opponents who had revolutionized warfare itself. The mighty Bone Render, Admiral Kesmora's flagship, and the terror of 17 star systems shook like a leaf in a hurricane as human. Fighters swarmed around its massive hull. Commander Tae-young Park led the assault with the precision of a surgeon, his strike team focusing their attacks on specific sections of the dreadnought's superstructure with devastating accuracy. "Target the communication arrays first," Park ordered his squadron, his fighter weaving between the flagship's defensive turrets with impossible grace. "Then hit their sensor clusters. I want this ship blind and mute before we move to the next phase." The Bone Render had been built to intimidate as much as to destroy. Its hull stretched nearly 2 miles from bow to stern, covered in armor plating thick enough to withstand direct hits from antimatter torpedoes. Weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of some ancient sea monster, each one capable of obliterating smaller vessels with a single shot. But all of that meant nothing when faced with human fighters that could phase through shields and strike at vulnerable points with pinpoint accuracy. Admiral Kesmora gripped the armrests of his command throne as his ship bucked and rolled under the relentless assault. Emergency lights bathed his bridge in red as system after system reported critical failures. The proud commander who had entered this battle expecting an easy victory now watched his fleet being systematically dismantled by opponents he had dismissed as primitive insects. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice cracking with barely controlled panic. "We've lost 17 ships in the last 6 minutes. But something strange is happening. The humans aren't destroying our vessels. They're targeting our weapons and engines specifically, leaving life support systems untouched." The Admiral's crystalline skin shifted to a dull grey color. Among his species, this indicated deep fear and confusion. As he studied the tactical display, a terrible realization began to dawn on him. The human ships weren't fighting to kill, they were fighting to prove a point. Every strike was calculated, every attack precisely aimed to disable rather than destroy. "They could have annihilated us," he whispered, his forearms trembling as the truth hit him like a physical blow. "They're holding back. These humans are demonstrating their superiority while showing mercy we don't deserve." Captain Sangmin Kim's voice suddenly filled the bridge, transmitted on an open frequency that every surviving Vorthak ship could hear. His tone was calm and professional, carrying none of the fear or desperation the aliens had expected from a supposedly inferior species. "Admiral Kesimora," the human captain began, his words echoing through the command center of every disabled alien vessel. I believe you offered us a choice earlier when you thought you held all the advantages. Now I find myself in a position to extend the same courtesy to you." The Admiral's mandibles clicked nervously as he listened to the human's proposal. "Surrender immediately and order your remaining ships to stand down," Captain Kim continued, "or we will be forced to demonstrate the full extent of human military capabilities. I assure you, what you've witnessed so far represents only a fraction of what we're capable of when we stop showing restraint." Across the battlefield, the evidence of human superiority was impossible to ignore. Vorthak warships drifted helplessly through space, their mighty engines silent, their fearsome weapons offline, but their crews still alive and breathing thanks to intact life support systems. It was a display of power that was somehow more terrifying than complete destruction would have been. The aliens had expected these humans to beg for mercy, to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds. Instead, they found themselves completely outmatched by opponents who possessed technology beyond their understanding and tactics that made their centuries of military experience worthless. Lieutenant Yunseo Park guided her fighter in a slow, pass directly in front of the Bone Render's main bridge, her ship's advanced scanners recording everything for later analysis. But more than gathering intelligence, her presence served a psychological purpose, showing the alien admiral that human pilots could fly with impunity through space that should have been protected by the flagship's defensive systems. "This is impossible," Admiral Kesamura whispered to himself, watching the small human fighter drift past his bridge like a predator examining defeated prey. How did we miss such capabilities? How did they hide this level of technology from our intelligence networks? The silence that followed the battle was more devastating than any weapon the humans had used. Admiral Kesamura stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by flickering displays and the quiet hum of emergency power systems. Through the massive viewports, he could see the scattered remains of what had once been the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy. 49. Vorthak warships drifted helplessly through space, like broken toys discarded by an angry child. Some listed badly to one side, their hulls cracked but not breached. Others spun slowly in the void, their engines dark and their weapon systems nothing more than twisted metal. But most haunting of all was the fact that despite the complete destruction of their military capability, every ship still had working life support systems. The humans had shown a level of precision that was almost insulting. They had neutered an entire fleet while keeping casualties to an absolute minimum. The Admiral's voice, when he finally managed to speak, sounded like an old man who had aged decades in the span of a few hours. "We surrender," he transmitted on an open frequency, the words scraping out of his throat like broken glass. The Vorthak Dominion yields to human authority in this system. Captain Dajan Lee, whose calm diplomatic voice had tried to prevent this conflict from the very beginning, responded with the same professional courtesy she had shown throughout the encounter. "Admiral Kesamura, your surrender is accepted. All surviving crew members will be treated according to established galactic conventions for prisoners of war. Medical assistance is already being dispatched to your damaged vessels." But even as she spoke these formal words, there was something in her tone that suggested she understood the deeper significance of what had just occurred. This wasn't just a military defeat. It was the complete shattering of everything the Vorthak had believed about their place in the universe. "I must ask," the alien admiral said, his crystalline features now a dull, lifeless color that indicated complete emotional exhaustion among his species. "How did you accomplish this? Our best intelligence networks reported that humanity possessed only basic spacefaring technology. Your ships appeared small and primitive on our sensors," Commander Bo-Ra Choi answered from her position aboard the Hyoes Jeju, and there was something almost gentle in her voice as she explained the reality that the Admiral was struggling to accept. "Admiral, human military philosophy has always been built around a very simple principle. Never reveal your true capabilities until the moment you absolutely need them." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "What you saw today wasn't humanity showing off or demonstrating our full power. This was simply us using enough force to end a conflict that didn't need to happen in the first place." As if the universe itself wanted to emphasize her point, new contacts suddenly appeared on every sensor display in the system. The space around Proxima 7, which moments before had been filled only with disabled Vorthak ships, and the 12 human vessels that had caused such devastation, now showed additional fleet signatures emerging from hyperspace. More human ships materialized out of the void, not just one or two additional vessels, but entire fleets. Each new group consisted of exactly 12 ships, identical in appearance to the force that had just defeated the entire Vorthak armada. The aliens watched in growing horror as fleet after fleet arrived, until the space around them contained more human military assets than they had ever imagined possible. Captain Min-Soo Lee's voice crackled over the communication channels, speaking from the bridge of the newly arrived UES Mokpo. "Control, this is 7th Fleet reporting as ordered. 12 ships per formation, just like the intelligence briefings said the Vorthak were expecting to see." Admiral Kesimura's mandibles began to tremble uncontrollably as the full scope of his miscalculation became clear. Each of these small fleets possessed the same hidden capabilities that had just destroyed his forces. Humanity hadn't sent a desperate diplomatic mission backed by inadequate military support. They had sent a carefully calculated demonstration of power, knowing exactly how the Vorthak would respond and preparing accordingly. "How many?" he whispered, staring at the tactical display that now showed more human ships than stars visible in the local sky. "How many fleets do you have?" 3 days had passed since the battle that changed everything, and Admiral Kesimura found himself in a place he had never imagined he would see, sitting across a polished conference table from the very humans he had dismissed as inferior creatures just days before. The conference room aboard the UES Seoul was surprisingly comfortable, with soft lighting and chairs designed to accommodate different alien anatomies. It was a far cry from the harsh interrogation chambers he had expected. The human officers who surrounded him treated him with a level of respect that he knew he didn't deserve. After the arrogant threats he had made, after the insults he had hurled at their species, they could have justified any number of humiliating punishments. Instead, they offered him food suitable for his biology, medical care for his wounded pride, and the dignity of negotiating as equals, rather than as conqueror and conquered. Admiral Kesimura's crystalline features had shifted to muted colors that reflected his new understanding of his place in the universe. The proud conqueror who had entered this system expecting an easy victory was gone, replaced by a being who had learned painful lessons about assumptions and underestimation. The Vorthak Dominion formally agrees to enter into negotiations regarding territorial boundaries in this sector, he announced, his voice carrying the weight of official government policy. His 4 hands moved carefully as he signed the preliminary ceasefire agreement, each signature a symbol of his species' recognition of humanity's power. "We also acknowledge the United Earth Space Force as an equal military power in this region of space." The words tasted bitter in his mouth, but he spoke them with the dignity of a leader who understood when he had been outmatched completely. Captain Hyun-Soo Park, the same officer whose small fleet the Admiral had mocked just days earlier, nodded with the professional courtesy of a seasoned diplomat. "We appreciate your cooperation, Admiral Kesimura. The Proxima 7 system and its trilithium deposits will be jointly administered by both our peoples until permanent territorial agreements can be established through proper channels." As the formal proceedings concluded and the alien admiral prepared to return to his homeworld, he found himself unable to leave without asking the question that had haunted him since the moment of his defeat. He turned back toward the human captain, his curiosity overriding his wounded pride. "Captain Park," he said quietly, "I must know the answer to something that will determine how my government responds to this new reality. How many ships does humanity actually possess? How large is your real fleet?" The human captain's response was accompanied by a smile that seemed both friendly and mysterious, the expression of someone who held secrets that could reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. "Enough, Admiral," he replied simply. "Humanity always has enough." The simplicity of the answer was somehow more unsettling than any detailed military briefing could have been. It suggested a level of preparation and capability that the Vorthak had never suspected. resources that humanity had kept hidden while other species fought among themselves for territory and dominance. As Admiral Kesmora's shuttle departed the human fleet and began its journey back to Vorthak space, he carried with him more than just a signed ceasefire agreement. He bore a message that would fundamentally alter how every major power in the galaxy viewed the species from Earth. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows, revealing themselves as a civilization that genuinely preferred peaceful solutions but had prepared thoroughly for every other possibility. Word of the encounter spread rapidly through the networks of trade routes, diplomatic channels, and intelligence services that connected the civilized galaxy. Other alien species received detailed reports about the mysterious human fleet that had appeared weak and insignificant, but had demonstrated military capabilities that defied conventional understanding. The age of dismissing humanity as a primitive, backward species had ended in the space around Proxima 7. A new chapter in galactic politics had begun, one in which Earth's children would be treated with the respect that came from proven strength rather than assumed weakness. The humans had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Sometimes the smallest fleets cast the longest and most intimidating shadows.